Okay, so Hare Krishna, everybody. Last time we just discussed the purpose of reading Bhagavad Gita, and then we covered up uh, 5 verses in the first chapter. So just a quick revision of that. So we understood, why we should read Bhagavad Gita, because it's a instruction of Srila Prabhupada to all of us. We have to read and apply. So this is instruction from Srila Prabhupada to all of us, everybody connected to ISKCON. Our purpose is not to become armchair scholars or to become bookworms or something. No, we have to please Srila Prabhupada by following his instruction. And who is Srila Prabhupada? He is the ambassador of this embassy of spiritual world, that is ISKCON. So Prabhupada is going to give us to the spiritual world. So our purpose, our motive is to please him, to seek his blessings. Okay, so after that we covered up the first 5 verses, beginning with the first verse. In the first verse, we understand about Dhritarashtra's doubts, Dhritarashtra's inquiry from Sanjaya, about what is happening on the battlefield. That on the surface we can't understand the meaning, but acharyas, they help us to understand the inner meaning. The inner meaning of the question, it conveys that Dhritarashtra, he was afraid of the influence of the holy place. Dharam Kshetre, the very first word, Dharam Kshetre, it conveys that the place was holy. It was the Kshetra of a Dharam, where Dharma prevails, where influence of Dharma was prevalent. So Dhritarashtra was afraid of the influence of that on the consciousness of his sons as well as Pandavas. And he didn't want any of them to withdraw from the fight. Why? Because he was confident that his sons will win. So fight should take place definitely. And then in the middle of the purport, we saw how Krishna played the role of a transcendental farmer to uproot the weeds like Duryodhana and his army for the healthy growth of the crop, religion, dharma. And the last paragraph of the purport, we saw Dhritarashtra's mentality is revealed, his partial mentality is revealed, how he is separating Pandavas from the Kaurava dynasty because of his attachment to his sons, because of material attachment, which is a great impediment and source of misery. So our lesson from this was that we have to remove the anchor of material attachments to so many things. Unless and until we remove that attachment anchor, we will not be able to proceed ahead in devotional service and cross the ocean of material existence. And in the second verse, then we saw Sanjaya. He told Dhritarashtra that how now King Duryodhan, he went to his teacher and spoke. So he's addressing Duryodhan as king. So in the last few lines of purport, Prabhupada is conveying that Duryodhan, he was very diplomatic and he was fit to be a politician. And from the verses starting from 3 to 11, now we are reading how Duryodhan is diplomatic. So Prabhupada is explaining that very nicely in the purports. We covered up the third verse where Duryodhana is calling out Drupad Putrena. He's addressing Drushtadumna as Drupad Putrena. He's not calling him by his name. Why? Because he's reminding Dronacharya, his guru, of the mistake he had committed by training him. And he's indirectly he's conveying the message that don't commit second mistake now by showing partiality to Pandavas. So this is his diplomacy. Indirectly he's conveying the message to his teacher, so that his teacher, it doesn't even become upset, but he gets the message. And in the fourth verse, then we saw how he's judging the enemy. So the practical lesson from it for us was, first of all, we should always, in our spiritual practice also, we should know who is our enemy and we should judge the potency of the enemy. And we understood that Maya, our own mind, that is our enemy. So we don't have to, ignore it. We don't have to underestimate the power of this enemy. We have to be very alert, very strong, very determined, because it's very important that we know the strength of Maya. And understanding that she is a formidable enemy, we should be very careful and alert in the practice of our devotional service. So that's the lesson we got from there. And in the fifth verse, that was just the translation. So he's calling out the names of some powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti, Bhuj, and Shabya. And in the sixth verse, now let's see what does he do. So again, till verse number 11, we are understanding about Duryodhan's diplomacy. So starting with verse number 6. So those who are interested to read, they can raise their hands and you can take turns and read the translation and the purport. I'll say the shaloka. Verse number 6. Yuddha manyuscha vikranta utmajuscha virayavan sobhadrau draupadescha sarva eva maharataha. Someone please read the translation and purport. There's only translation for this.
Shall I read, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Verse number 6. There are the mighty Yudamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So he's calling them as Maharatha. So he's describing the enemy party. So what type of fighters are there? So he's saying they are Maharatha. So there are different categories of fighters. You know, there is basically three category of the fighters. One is Ardharatha, warrior. He requires help to fight even one enemy. He's like half of a warrior, Ardharatha. And then we have Maharatha. One warrior can fight with 1,000 other warriors. And the third category is Atiratha. One can fight with 10,000 warriors. So he is pointing out that in the enemy army, there are many Maharathas there. One warrior can fight with 1,000 of warriors. So it's a strong army. Okay, verse number 7. Asmakam tu vishishta अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान निबोध दिविजोतम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थ तान ब्रवीमीते. Next, Mataji, please read translation. There is only translation for this also.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I will read. Mataji.
Yes, ma'am.
But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So now Duryodhana is making sure that Dronacharya doesn't get discouraged. That's why he's saying that. Oh, best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are specially qualified to lead my military force. So he will try to encourage him that my army is also not weak. Let me tell you about the strength of my army. But the word here to be noticed is Mama Sanasya, my military force. So again, this shows Duryodhana's concept of I and mine, the attachment. He is, attached to the bodily concept that is revealed here. So my army, which is very prominent among, this type of concept, me and mine, it is prominent among non-devotees. So this reveals the character of Duryodhana. So non-devotees, they are very attached to themselves and their possessions. That should not be the nature of the devotee. That's an understanding for us. Okay, moving on to verse number 8. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitim Jayah Ashwathama Vikarnascha Somadatis Tathevacha. Next, Mataji, please read translation and purport. I mean, Mataji, Prabhuji, whoever is there. Next devotee, please read it.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, ma'am.
May I?
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Burishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Purport. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana, Ashwathama is the son of Dronacharya, and Saumadatti or Burishrava is the son of the king of the Bahalikas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here again, there is the point of his diplomacy. So in the list, he's first addressing Dronacharya and not Bhishma. There are personalities like you, First of all, he's addressing Dronacharya, his guru. Why? Because Dronacharya is a Brahmana and Bhishma is a Kshatriya. So from Varnashrama point of view, Brahmana is at a higher level than Kshatriya. So if he had taken Bhishma's name first, then Dronacharya would have felt hurt. But if he says Dronacharya's name first, Bhishma would not mind it. So both of them will be happy if he addresses Dronacharya first. So he's trying to keep both of them happy, and he's also naming here Vikarna. Vikarna was the brother of Duryodhana, but he was not a Maharathi. He was not a very great warrior. Still, his name is mentioned here. Why? Anybody? You want to share something? Okay. So he is mentioning Vikarna's name here because Vikarna had a soft corner for Pandavas. He opposed the disrobing of Draupadi in the assembly. He was the only one to do so. Nobody spoke a word. Vikarna was the only one to do so. So that's why Duryodhana, he is, concerned that he has a soft corner for Pandavas, so he should not favor them. So to encourage him that I have you on my side, he's calling out his name also in the list now, to keep him pacified, to ensure that he doesn't switch to the other party. So Duryodhana mentions his name. So this is again diplomacy. Okay, so moving on to the next verse, 9th verse. Anye cha bahava shruram madharthe tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharanaha sarve yuddha visharadaha. Rama Mataji, you can read next.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Purport. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Kritavarma, and Salya, all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above mentioned combined strength of his friends. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here, what do we see? He's trying to cover up a larger number of the warriors in a side. So besides these, there are many others ready to lay down their lives. So look at the words he has chosen. Mad arthe tyakta jivitaha. So word to word meaning, if you see, that for my sake, they are prepared to risk their life. They are prepared to lay down their lives. So acharyas say, that many times Mother Saraswati, she gives specific words to indicate, what's going to happen. This is called premonition. So he has predicted already that everybody on my side will lay down their lives for me. So definitely he's going to lose. So this is Mother Saraswati's prediction. So he just assumed those words. And
Mataji, here Mother Saraswati words means these
Mhm.
words are spoken by Duryodhana itself. It means
yes,
that
yes, yes,
Saraswati.
Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Spoken by Duryodhana. But what happens is sometimes, we say that, that's why we say that we should be very careful about our speech, because Mother
Yeah.
Saraswati may turn out our words to, happen to be true. So we should not speak, something which doesn't make any sense or negative. So
But
here,
Mataji, is these words are still applicable in Kali Yuga, Mataji? Because that time it was like those people are like pious and they have done many good activities. Now Kali Yuga, if somebody speaks the bad words to anybody, I mean others,
Mhm.
will it still applicable? Will it
Yeah,
apply?
Mataji, that's what it is. It is said that it is. That's why we have to be, that's called an austerity of speech. We should be very careful
Okay.
about speech. And what time it happens, we don't know. They say that, once in 24 hours, Mother Saraswati is sitting on our tongue, and whatever we say, that happens to come out to be true. So we should be careful about it. Yeah. So there's no mention about yugas, yeah, whether it was possible only in that yuga and now it doesn't work out. There's no mention like that.
Mhm.
Anyways, we should be very careful about speech. That's why we should chant Hare Krishna most of the time, and we should speak pleasing words.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. So that's what we just saw here. So Nana Shastra Praharnaraha. They are equipped with many weapons, but they are ready to lay down their lives for me. So this is what we just said here. Okay. Verse number 10. Aparyaptam tad asmakam balam bhishma bhirikshatam paryaptam tva idam etisham balam bhima bhirikshitam. Next devotee, please read translation, Prabhupada. Shobha Mataji, you can go ahead.
Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by Grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Shall I go on, Mataji, Papa?
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Okay. Herein, an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general Grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on the account of presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His
His conclusion
his
that
conclusion would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here from the verse, if you see the words, the first word of the first line and then the first word of the second line, apriyaptam and priyaptam. So there are two words. These two words, they are explained by acharyas, in a beautiful way. So apriyaptam, according to word meaning, if you see, it is immeasurable, immeasurable strength. So he's saying that because Bhishma will be protecting us. So he's using this word for Bhishma, that Bhishma's, our grandfather Bhishma's strength is immeasurable, apriyaptam. So he will be protecting us very well. And then he's using the word priyaptam for Bhima, that their strength is limited because Bhima's strength is not on their side. There is Bhima, and Bhima's strength is not equal to Bhishma's strength. Bhishma is more powerful than Bhima. And another meaning, according to acharyas, is apriyaptam also means insufficient. It means immeasurable. We got that from word to word meaning from Prabhupada's translation here. And according to acharyas, the other meaning of apriyaptam is insufficient. So here he wants to say that Bhishma's strength is also insufficient. Why? Because he has got affection for Pandavas. And priyaptam he's using for Bhima, that means sufficient. Why? Because Bhima is boiling with anger, is boiling with rage to kill the Kauravas. He has no affection for them. So it has double meaning. First meaning is Bhishma's strength is immeasurable, so he can protect us very well. The second meaning is that Bhishma's strength is insufficient because he has got affection for Pandavas. And same thing for Priyapta. First meaning is that Bhima's strength is limited. He is not as powerful as Bhishma. But the second meaning is it is sufficient because he is boiling with anger. He has no affection for them. So both the meanings are correct here. Again, this is Duryodhana's diplomacy. How? Because Bhishma will be encouraged taking the first meaning, that his strength is immeasurable and he can protect his side very well. And Dronacharya, he would take the second meaning, and he will understand that there is affection. Bhishma has got some affection for Pandavas, and therefore Dronacharya will be more alert. He will be more careful. So by this one verse, he's encouraging Bhishma and he's alerting Dronacharya at the same time. So this is again diplomacy of Duryodhana displayed here, right? So because he in the purport also, if you see the lines, Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. So he's comparing Bhishma with Bhima here. Okay, so next verse, verse number 11. Hayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva bhirakshantu bhavantah sarva eva hi.
I will read.
Yes, yes.
Translation. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Can you go up, Mataji, a little bit for purport to read? Yes. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishmadev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man. So everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depend on the presence of Bhishma Deva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Deva and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife, Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here what we see, this verse again, this is the last verse, which is showing Duryodhana's diplomacy. So after glorifying the Maharathis, now he thinks that other warriors should not feel that they are useless. So to encourage them, he says this, that all of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points. Because he's just saying that Bhishma is an old man, so you all should give protection from all sides. So they all should also be encouraged that they also have an important role to play. Bhishma Dev also needs their, Bhishma also needs their protection. And in the purport towards the end, we see that he was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya. Why? Because they had not spoken a word when Draupadi appealed for help, when she was forced to appear naked in the presence of the assembly of journals. So he was confident now also they will not show any compassion, and they had not shown any compassion during gambling performance also. So he's hoping that these journals would now completely support him, giving up the affection for Pandavas. So he's pretty confident about it. So we saw how he encouraged, first he judged the army strength, then he encouraged all the warriors on his side, starting from his guru, then Bhishmadev, then other warriors, his own brother Vikarna. So he was very diplomatic. Now, starting from verse number 12. Uh, yeah, so we will see. So now we will start seeing, the signs of victory, on Pandava's side, how it was very much clear that they are victorious. That we will start from 14th verse, now 12th, 13th, and again they will just tell us more about Duryodhana's army. Next verse, verse number 12. Tasya sanjayan harsham guru vradha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyoche shankham dadamahu pratapavan. Who want to go ahead? Sudha Kumar Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Shall I continue on to the purport, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. We have to read everything. Yeah.
Okay. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of the grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains could be spared in that connection. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So now we just see that how they are preparing for the war, and the conch shell have started to be blown by both the sides. So Bhishma Dev has started blowing the conch shell. It made a sound like a roar of a lion. But he was a devotee of Krishna. So he also informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle. So Bhishma would do his best. He blew the conch shell very, very loud, but he was, pretty sure that because Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side, so they had no chance of victory. Okay, so just next two words again, we see how the conch shells are just blowing up by everybody. Tatha Shankascha Breyascha, verse number 13, please. Tatha Shankascha Breyascha, Panwanka Gomukhaha, Sehaseva Abhyayantaha, Sa Shabdaha Tumulo Abhavat.
Mataji, I'll read.
Yeah, yes,
I'll
Prabhuji.
read.
Yeah.
Translation. After that, the conch shell, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. There is no purport, Mataji, here.
There's no purport. I'll read the next verse. You can read the translation purport for that verse, Prabhuji.
Sure. Sure.
ततः श्वेतिर्हयैर्युक्ते महति सन्दने स्थितौ माधव पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्खौ प्रदध्मतु.
Translation. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on the great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishmadeva, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayas, Jayas to Pandu, Jayas to Pandu Putranam Yesam
Putranam Yesham Akshe Janardana.
Putranam Yesam Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory of the fortunes were awaiting Arjuna, and indicating by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shells of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna. And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So now from this verse, we are, we have to notice this is a work for everybody. All of us have to be attentive now and see what are the signs of victory for the Pandavas now. Starting from verse number 14 till verse number 20, we have to find out the signs of victory for the Pandavas. So in this verse, what is the sign? The word Madhava. Madhava is goddess of, the husband of goddess of fortune. It's the name of Krishna, and it means that he's the husband of the goddess of fortune. So in the purport, if we see, what Prabhupada is saying, Jasya tu Pandu Putranam Yasham Pakshe Janardana. So victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also present. And because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. And wherever there is goddess of fortune, victory and fortune are always there. Madhava Krishna is there, goddess of fortune is there on Arjuna's side. So victory and fortune, they were awaiting for Arjuna. So this is a sign of victory. We are getting it, These are the words used by Sanjaya. So he's indicating already. And then the last few lines, besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated, it was donated by Agni, the fire god. And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over all the three worlds. So his chariot was also not an ordinary one. It was capable of conquering all the sides all around the world. So in this verse, we find these two signs. Now let's see what the next verse tells us, if it will tell us something. And then again, one more thing, it is the transcendental conch shell, Divya Shankho. In the previous verses, we saw that Bhishma and the other warriors, they blew their conch shell, but there was no word like Divya for their conch shell. But here, for Krishna, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. So their conch shells were not ordinary. So this is again a sign of their victory. So Divya Shankhav and Madhava, these two words we get from this verse. Next verse, number 15. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Pondram Dadhamaho Mahashankham Bhima Karma Vakrodara. Lakshmi Mataji, you want to read? Ajita Mataji, Hemlata Mataji, anybody please?
Can I read? Can I read, Miss?
Yes,
Mataji?
please. Yes, Mataji,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
A translation. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his. The Devadatta and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Poundara. Should I read the puppet, Madam Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, please read the full thing.
Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity, and in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the terms of the surrender of the living, I finished that, I think. Yeah. Battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesha. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as the son of Vasudeva. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavana. His name is Parthasarathi because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Rishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vikrodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were
all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle. And that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So again, everything is explained very well by Prabhupada in the purport. There is nothing much to talk about it. So Krishna is referred here as Rishikesha because he's the controller of the senses. And here on the battlefield now, he will control Arjuna's senses and he will give him direction. And Krishna has got various names. How he got those names, that is explained in the first paragraph of the purport. In the second paragraph, we just see how Arjuna is referred as Dhananjaya because he helped his elder brother in fetching the wealth. And Bhima is known as Varkodara because he was a voracious eater and he performed Herculean tasks like killing the demon Hidimba. So that all is explained well by Prabhupada in the purport. So moving on to the next verse. So in this verse, we didn't get any sign of victory as such, right? So far, we have got 3 signs of victory from the verse number 14. You remember that? Madhava, then is Divya Shankam, and then in the purport, but Prabhupada is mentioning chariot from Agni, right? So let's move on to verse number 16 to 18. Yeah. Ananta Vijyam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Shubhosha Mani Pushpakau Kashyascha Parameshwa Ashaha Shikhandi cha Maharatha Drishtadyumno Viratascha Satyakischa Parijitaha Drupado Dropedeyascha Sarvasya Prithvipate Sobhadrascha Mahabahu Shankhan Dadmukh Prathak Prathak. Ravi, Prabhuji, you can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, please.
Translation: King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Shugosha and Manipushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Draupada, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. Purport: Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with Grandshare Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world. All were present there and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So again, here we saw how different conch shells are blown by warriors on both the sides. So there's again not much to be talked about here. So they just had kings from many states of the world, and they all were present there, but they all were doomed. And why? The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy forwarded by his sons. Not just materially blind, he was spiritually blind also. He was too attached because of his material attachment to his son Duryodhan, me and mine, bodily concept. So everybody was doomed because of that attitude. So verse number 19. Saghosho, one second, yeah, verse number 19. Saghosho dhartarashtranam hridayani vyadarita nabhascha prithvim cheva tumulo abhayanunadayan. Translation and purport. Lakshmi Mataji, Barnali Sen Mataji, please.
Can I read Mataji?
Okay.
Mataji, there is another Mataji.
Okay.
Yeah, Barnali Sen.
The following of these different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and to the up the earth. In the battered hearts of the sons of and in the battered her in the sons of Dhritarashtra. Purport: when Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking of the part of on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrence are not mentioned, but in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sound vibrated by the Pandavas party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter in the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So Hari Bol, that's such a wonderful message for us, very encouraging for us. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear. So what is conveyed here? That the blowing of the conch shells, from Pandava's side, it was heartbreaking. But what the conch shells blown from by Bhishma and others on the Duryodhana side, they did not, have an heartbreaking impact on Pandavas. Why? Because their conch shells, the Pandavas conch shells, Krishna, Arjuna, and everybody, their conch shells, we saw that in verse number 14, they were named as Divya Shankha, transcendental. Krishna was on their side, so it had a greater impact. They were Divya. So Dhritarashtra, he was shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas party. So one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear. That's why Pandava's heart was not broken, hearing the sound of the conch shells. Okay, so verse number 20. Now in this verse again we will get a sign, which indicates the victory of the Pandavas. Atha vyavastithan drishtva dhartya rashtra'n kapidhvaja pravarte shastra sampate dhanur udyamya pandavah rishikesham tada vakyam idam aha mahipate. Okay, Rama Mataji, Sudha Kumar Mataji, I see your hands raised. Yeah,
Yes,
one of you,
Mataji.
Rama Mataji.
Hare
Okay,
Krishna.
please. Yeah, please. Hare Krishna.
That time Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in the military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. Purport: the battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas, who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Rama in the battle between Rama and Ravana, and the Lord Rama emerged victorious. Now both Rama and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Rama himself, and wherever Lord Rama is his eternal servitor Hanuman and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever. And above all, the Lord of the senses, the Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus, all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle. In such auspicious conditions arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotee lay the signs of assured victory. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So beautifully Prabhupada has explained it, about the emblem of Hanuman, Kapidhvaja. So Arjuna, this is another sign of victory for Pandavas. So what is the word here? Kapidhvaja. So Arjuna's flag, it bore Hanumanji on it. It depicted Hanumanji. So what is the significance? Prabhupada explains the emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory, because both Ram, Krishna and Ram are same. So both Ram and Hanuman, they were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Rama himself. And wherever Lord Ram is, his eternal servitor, Hanuman is also present. And Ram is there, Hanuman is there, and also Mother Sita is there, and she's goddess of fortune. And in the 14th verse, we saw goddess of fortune means victory. So all the signs are here because Hanuman is depicted on Arjuna's flag. And another thing, Srila Prabhupada's lecture, we understand that here we see that Arjuna is fighting for Krishna. And why he has Hanuman's flag? Because he's following the previous fighting Acharya, like Hanumanji. Hanumanji had fought for Rama in the previous yuga. So he has depicted his flag with Hanumanji, with Bajrang Bali, praying to him that kindly help me. This is Vaishnavism. Vaishnavas, devotees, they don't have this, material concept of independence and all that. They depend upon the Acharya's mercy. They depend upon Lord's mercy. So Arjuna, he is trying to pray to Hanumanji that I have come here to fight for the Lord, and you have also fought for the Lord. So now please kindly help me, kindly bless me, guide me. So any activities of the Vaishnava, this is a lesson for us, a message for us. So any activities of the Vaishnavas should, whenever we do some activity, we should always pray to the previous acharyas. Kindly help me. Vaishnava is always thinking himself helpless and begging for help, begging for mercy from the previous acharyas. So devotee always depends upon the mercy of acharyas, mercy of Guru and Krishna. Not that, oh, I'm capable of doing everything and I'll go ahead and, I'm qualified enough and I will just accomplish everything. That should not be our attitude. Srila Prabhupada himself, when he was going in Jaladuta to Western world, he prayed that make me a puppet in your hand, O Lord Krishna, and make me dance to your tunes, because I have no words to speak to these Western people who are totally immersed in ignorance and passion. So Prabhupada was totally dependent upon the Lord and his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. And in Srimad Bhagavatam also we see how Shukdev Goswami, he glorifies the Lord before speaking Bhagavatam. He begs the Lord to give him the words to answer the questions of Parikshit Maharaj. Shukdev Goswami was very well versed in Bhagavatam, but still he prayed to the Lord. So these exalted Vaishnavas, Acharyas, they show to us by example that how we should be humble, how we should feel helpless, and we should depend upon our Guru, previous Acharyas, and the Lord. So this is unlike the modern day conception of being independent. We don't require any help, stand on your own feet, think on your own. So this is egoist modern conception. A devotee should not think like that. So this is the important message we get from here. And then we also learned about another sign of victory from this verse. So we covered up till verse number 20, 14 to 20, and we saw the signs of victory. The first one was Madhava, that means goddess of fortune was present then. Then there was Divya Shankha, transcendental conch shells, whereas the conch shell on the other sides were ordinary. They were not heartbreaking for Pandavas. And then we saw the chariot given to Arjuna was from Agni, and it was capable of winning, being victorious in all the directions. And in this verse now we saw Kapidvaja. So Hanuman depicted on Arjuna's flag was so significant. So we cover up the next section from 14 to 20 and move on to the section ahead, Krishna as Bhaktavatsalya. So that is from verse number 21 to 26. So let's see how much we can cover up today. Okay, so Krishna is Bhaktavatsalya. How he reciprocates with his devotees. What all can he do for his devotees? It's really amazing to learn that. Verse number 21 and 22. Arjuna Uvacha Senyor Ubhyor Madhye Ratham Sthapya Me Achyuta Yavad Etan Rikshe Aham Yodhau Kaman Avastitan Ker Maya Saha Yodhvayam Asmin Rana Samutyame. Sudha Mataji, you want to read?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes.
Could you scroll it a little bit, Mataji? Yes. Arjuna said, it is scrolled too much, Mataji. the translation I'm not able to see. Yes. Arjuna said, "O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Purport. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed herein as infallible. As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishikesha. I'm not able to see. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishikesha, the Lord of total senses. The relationship, the relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes great pleasure in his pure devotees assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the one giver of orders. Since he is the master, everyone is under his orders and no one is above him to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master in all circumstances. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but he was forced to come onto the battlefield by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who was the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there was no question of peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again and to see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So it is so beautiful. In the very first paragraph towards the middle, Prabhupada explains the relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotees. He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees, assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders. So what we see here, Arjuna is ordering Krishna. He's also addressing him as Achyuta. That means infallible, who never fails in his promises. So he's addressing him as Achyuta and is ordering him to take the chariot in between the two armies because he wants to see who all had come to fight. So this word infallible, Prabhupada has explained it in very detail. He says, Krishna never fails in his affection for his devotees. His Bhaktivedanta. He is the Supreme Lord. He is infallible, but still he agrees to become chariot driver for his devotee Arjuna. And it also indicates one of his opulence. One of opulence of Krishna, the Supreme God, is renunciation. He is not attached to his position of Godhead. That is the actual renunciation. Otherwise, what can he renounce? He is the owner of everything. So we find that, what he renounces, his position as the Supreme God. And he takes a humble, menial position to serve his devotee. Why does he do it? Out of his love for his devotees. Bhaktavatsalya. He is not obliged. No one forces him to do so. But out of his own sweet will, out of his love for his devotees, who love him and serve him selflessly. This is how he reciprocates. And other examples, where Krishna has helped his devotees, like we see, he helped Sudama, he helped Draupadi, couple of times, and he again did a menial service at Rasuya Yagya. He was washing the feet of all the guests when Yudhishthira was thrown as the king, and they performed the Rasuya Yagya. The guests who were coming there, Krishna was washing the feet of those guests. That's the service he took. And when his father Nand Maharaj had ordered him to get his footwear, how did Krishna carry it? By keeping it on his head. So he plays this type of menial roles in reciprocation to his devotees. So although his infallible master, on his own accord, out of his own will, he takes pleasures. So Prabhupada in his lecture, he tells that Arjuna is ordering. That means, one second. Okay. So here Arjuna is ordering that, Krishna. So Arjuna is becoming the controller and Krishna is becoming the controlled. Arjuna knows his position, but still, because Krishna had agreed to become his driver, he is ordering and is calling him infallible, because you don't fall from your promise, O Lord. That's why I'm ordering you. He knew that he is the supreme God. The servant, it's a wonderful relationship between Krishna and his devotees, how he accepts the role of a servant also for the pleasure of his devotees. Okay. So what else? Yeah, so that's what we understand from this verse. What's the time now? 8:02. So should we continue or should we stop here? It's already 8:02. Mataji's, should we continue next week now?
Yes, Mataji, we can continue next week, Mataji.
Yeah, sure. I don't want
Yes,
to hurry
yes, we
up.
can continue next week.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you everybody. Shri Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much
Hare
for
Krishna.
joining.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji.
Dandavat pranam.
Done with
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Mataji, Dandavat
Mataji.
Pranam.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna
Mataji.
Mataji.
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
pranam.